Hi, I'm Ben, welcome back to my channel. After a brief hiatus, I'm very pleased to say that book news is back. This was not one of those fake hiatuses that boy bands seem to go on when they're breaking up and they don't want to disappoint their fans. And I can't tell right now because I have just started filming, but it feels like this is a bumper edition. We've got a bunch of news, some prize stuff, and a smorgasbord of new releases. Basically, everything you need to know what's going on in the world of books. As ever, I'd love as much feedback on this format as you are willing to give, so please do let me know in the comments what's working and what's not. But right now, let's get straight into the news. There is a lot of news that I wanted to share with you, but news cycles move so fast now that it's been quite the challenge to nail down which stories to cover. Like, there was the TikTok ban that sent BookTok people into an absolute frenzy, but then that lasted about as long as one of Claire Keegan's books. So I hope by the time I put this video out, it is not full of completely outdated information. First up, let's talk about a news item related to end of the year wrapped experiences. It's a trend that's been popularized mainly by Spotify, and towards the end of the year now, Spotify Wrapped seems to take over social media with people sharing who their top artists were, what their top songs were. If you would like to know mine, my number one artist was Beyonce, and my number one song was Angel of My Dreams by Jade. Whatever you are thinking right now. Yes, it's true. Unfortunately though, it now seems like every single tech company feels the need to wrap up your year for you. So like the app I use to book train tickets wants to tell me how far I've travelled last year. And the software I use at work as a virtual whiteboard wants to tell me, well, I actually don't know what they want to tell me because I didn't open the email. But of course, bookish apps want to give you a wrapped experience too. And with powerful, shiny new generative AI tools able to do something both personalised and conversational at scale, and with massive energy use and environmental destruction, why not use them? What could go wrong? Well, Goodreads challenger Fable found out the hard way because it used generative AI to produce these kind of sassy commentaries on its users' reading habits, including, for some reason, leaning into some oddly anti-woke talking points. For example, it told one user, "Your journey dives deep into the heart of black narratives and transformative tales, leaving mainstream stories gasping for air. Don't forget to surface for the occasional white author, okay?" And it told another user that the books they read make me wonder if you're ever in the mood for a straight cis white man's perspective. Ugh, kinda icky, right? Obviously, not everyone got summaries this bad, and there are some less insidious but still quite annoying examples. So for instance, there was one where a user said that they read a lot of rom-coms and the AI described them as cringe. And you really don't want these apps to be shaming you for the books that you read. There was, of course, a load of backlash and people being very angry at Fable over this. I saw a bit of commentary, and I will be honest, I cannot remember where I saw this, so apologies if I'm misrepresenting any of the sentiment here, but I think I saw some people suggesting it somehow exposed something about the underlying beliefs of Fable. There was something nefarious about them. I don't think that's the case, and there are enough purposefully harmful attacks on minority groups going on right now that we really don't need to be on the lookout for more villains. But what I do think it does is expose the risks of using AI for jobs like these, and many other jobs besides. The way these AI models work is that they are just guessing the next word, and they are only as good as their training. Commonly, they are being trained with content from the internet, often without permission, but that's another issue. But the point is, they are reflective of what is out there on the net. And sadly, the internet is an absolute cesspool right now and only seems to be getting worse. And it may be getting worse because of how much AI slop is being created. So if the web is flooded with disinformation and anti-woke nonsense, often generated by AI in the first place, then we should not be surprised when it starts to pop up in the tools that use AI. This stuff is not being effectively regulated, and I'm really skeptical about whether governments are going to be able to keep up with it. And that's without considering the optics of a platform that exists to celebrate human creativity using technology that undermines human creativity. I don't think that's a good look. After all this blew up, Fable did march out one of their product managers on Instagram to say they were deeply sorry and that they have since removed a bunch of features that make use of generative AI. Hopefully a lesson learned for Fable. I do have to say, out of all the book tracking apps out there, Fable by far has the nicest interface, and I feel reasonably qualified to say that because I do work in UI design, but I just cannot stomach tracking my reading on a third app because I've already got Goodreads and the Story Graph on the go. If anyone watching is a user of Fable, I'd love to hear your opinions on it. Speaking of doomy AI news, there is a company called Spines that has said it wants to use AI to help publish 8 1,000 books in 2025, bringing to bear some of our fears about AI flooding the world with dross. In fairness, this is not about using AI to write the books, it's just to edit, format and distribute them, but I think it really undermines and demeans the important work of human editors and all the other humans involved in making a book happen. Because although a book often only has one name on it, or two if it's a translation and the publisher's doing the right thing and decides to put the translator's name on the cover, it actually takes a village to bring a book into the world. I, for one, am not really in support of undermining all these other crucial roles, especially at a time when many big publishing houses are cutting back budgets on those sorts of jobs. Many people do these jobs not for the salary, because publishing isn't massively lucrative for individuals, but they do it because they're passionate about it. These are exactly the types of jobs that AI should not be displacing. I loved the response to this news from publisher Canongate, who wrote on Blue Sky calling them dingbats and saying they didn't care about writing or books, and rightly calling out the endless money pit that is any business plan with the letters A and I attached to it at the moment. In the interest of full disclosure, Spines did reach out to me to do a sponsorship on the channel, but I did not reply because I do not read my emails. I would have said no though, because if you can't tell, I'm a bit of an AI skeptic. And I've never done a sponsorship on the channel. I'm not sure if I ever really want to, but who knows, maybe one day. The next item is an unusual story of what I would generously like to think is a coincidence, but let me tell you about it and you can make up your own mind. So there is a book coming out called Endling by Maria Riva. It's coming out in the UK in July, and it's about these 3 women in Ukraine who go on a road trip and they take with them a last of its kind snail, an endling, called Lefty. Sounds like a reasonably interesting premise for a novel. Well, apparently not just to Maria Riva, because a German author called Yasmin Schreiber also wrote a book called Endling, also about 3 women, featuring a road trip and a last of its kind snail. And that book came out in Germany in November 2023. Now, I am not least for legal reasons, wanting to suggest that this is a straight up ripoff, but it is absurdly similar, and commenters on an Instagram post about Riva's book noted that with some consternation. What makes me think this is not shady is that it would be pretty bold to so clearly take all of these aspects of a book, right down to the snail on the cover, and regurgitate it on purpose. Like, this is a good idea for a novel, sure, but it's not that good. It is not worth stealing. I mean, you'd at least swap the snail for a different animal. I'm sure the snails in the books are personified and they're really cute and all that, but snails are not famous for being the most expressive animals. And this would be a deceit that is so easy to uncover. It would be like me copying Jack Edwards' Celebrity Book Club videos, picking all of the same celebrities, copying the thumbnail, having the exact same takes on all the books, and then being like, no, I actually researched Harry Styles' reading taste all by myself. For what it's worth, someone tagged Yasmin Schreiber in the comments of this Instagram post I saw, and she seemed to take it in good faith. And if she is not aggrieved, then we probably shouldn't be either. But it is an interesting story of coincidence at the very least. Okay, next up we've got a sad one, so apologies in advance about that. Late last year, the author and critic Gary Indiana passed away in his apartment in New York City, and in handling his estate, his personal library of hundreds of books, items of sentimental and cultural value, were packed up and sent across the country. The intention was to establish a foundation and a residency in a private home in Altadena. The books arrived, but they arrived just hours before Altadena was devastated by the Californian wildfires. In an essay in the London Review of Books, it was revealed by novelist Colin Tabine that the home was completely destroyed and the entire collection was lost. It was unclear at first if Indiana's personal archive was also part of this collection that had been shipped to California, but thankfully it turned out not to be the case. So his manuscripts and his journals, they're all safe, they're still in New York, and they're going to be added to archives already kept at NYU. You might think, oh well, it's just some books. Although if you are watching this video, I hope that's not how you feel about books. But in any case, I think small stories of loss like this are a way into tragedies that feel sometimes really overwhelming. I suppose that's one of the reasons why reading is such an important thing to me, because it's all about these personal stories, a way into much bigger issues. This is one of many, many stories about homes and lives lost as a result of the fires. There are so many GoFundMes for people who have lost everything. I was having a look on the GoFundMe website and there's like 250 pages of listings, but there is also a central fund that you can donate to. I think it's raised almost $6 million so far. And if you'd also like to donate, then I will put that that link in the description. Finally, there was this super interesting game of capitalist chicken that played out between Amazon and UK publisher Bloomsbury. Basically, they couldn't reach an agreement and Amazon announced that they were going to pull all Bloomsbury titles off their platform. At the last minute, miraculously, everything was worked out and Bloomsbury titles stayed where they were. But it was fascinating to see these backroom discussions spill out onto the shop floor. I think it speaks to the sad reality that Amazon probably is very important to the success of many books and many publishers, and not being available on Amazon, maybe even more so when it comes to Kindle than print editions, it can really kneecap a title. I've seen this play out when I've recommended books to people in person who say, oh yeah, I'll get it on Amazon, and they pull up the app immediately. And if they can't find it, they just don't buy it. I do try to nudge friends towards non-Amazon places, but for lots of people, physical stores aren't that convenient, and other online shop fronts like bookshop.org or Waterstones, while they are great, either can't compete on delivery prices or delivery speed or even the cost of the book itself. Obviously, all of that stuff does come at a cost somewhere in the chain, often at the expense of workers, but there's just a lot of work to do to unseat Amazon from its dominant position. Let's move on then to book prize news, starting with winners. The only winners I think have been announced recently were the Nero Book Awards category winners. So they were winners across the fiction, debut fiction, children's fiction and non-fiction awards. They've all been announced, including a book I loved last year and was on the Booker Prize longlist, so will be familiar to a lot of you, Wild Houses by Colin Barrett. And one that I'm really excited to see make it through to the grand finale, is Lost in the Garden by Adam Leslie, because I think this is a huge boon for Dead Ink, which is an indie book publisher that published this one. Those 4 category winners will now duke it out for the top prize of Book of the Year. There have been some shortlists and longlists announced, so the Gordon Byrne Prize announced its shortlist. If you've not heard of this one, it's a prize that aims to reward books with ambition, ones that push boundaries, cross genres and challenge readers' expectations. It's named after an author called Gordon Byrne who did that sort of stuff with his own work. As usual, this is a mixture of different types of books, so it's fun to see Headshot get nominated for another prize, and I'm really interested in reading Mrs. Jekyll. Speaking of Mrs. Jekyll, it's had a very good week because it's also been announced as a nominee on the long list for the Dylan Thomas Prize, which is for authors under the age of 40 in tribute to the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas, who died when he was 39. I think this is a fantastic long list, but then I would say that because it has my favourite book of 2024 on it, Glorious Exploits. It also has The Safekeep, which I thought was fantastic, a 5-star read for me, and a few books that I am very keen to get to, like The Coin and Pity. Absolutely loving that new cover for The Fertile Earth as well. The world's longest long list is also back. The Dublin Literary Awards long list of 71 books has been announced, including some fan favourite titles like Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, North Woods by Daniel Mason, and James by Percival Everett. It also has some smaller titles that it's great to see get some recognition, like Orla Owen's Christ on a Bike, and I think maybe a little bit weirdly it's got books on there that seem to be a few prize cycles ago now, like Prophet Song and Study for Obedience. If you are wondering why the long list is so long, well, the nominations are made by a number of libraries, and if even one library nominates a title, it makes it onto the long list. Quite a big list to pass through though, so it might be worth hanging on until the next stage in this prize. Finally, the Republic of Consciousness UK and Ireland longlist has been revealed. This is for small presses in the UK and Ireland and includes a book that I really loved, Good Lord by Ella Frears, and one I am extremely keen to read, Mother Naked by Glenn James Brown. Not sure what to make of the rest of the list, as this is pretty fresh news, but it's always exciting to have new books put on your radar. There is a US version of this prize that recently announced its longlist as well. I honestly have not had the time to look into it, but I know that Sarah over at Eyes on Indie is super keen on this prize and is reading the entire long list, so I will link to her video about it in the description if you want to find out more. Just a couple of dates for your diary for February, but some pretty significant ones. On the 12th, the Women's Prize is going to announce its second non-fiction long list. I know lots of people are very, very buzzing for that one. And on the 25th of February, the International Booker Prize long list will be revealed. I'm going to have some predictions coming up for that one very soon, so look out for that video. Let's talk now about new releases for February. So on the 6th of the month, there are a couple of books coming out that sound really great. First up is We Do Not Part by Han Kang, translated from Korean by Lee Ye-won and Paige Anaya Morris. This is Kang's first newly published novel in English since her Nobel Prize win, about a woman who sets out to fulfill a request for her sick friend, and in doing so has to confront things from her past. It's been getting a lot of love from early readers from what I've seen on Instagram. Also on the 6th is The Boy from the Sea by Garrett Carr. This is set in 70s Ireland on the west coast. It's about a baby who is found abandoned on a beach, adopted and raised by by a fisherman into a captivating and confounding young boy. And then rounding out the releases on the 6th This is a love story by Jessica Soffer. This is set in New York about a couple who are looking back over their 50-year marriage. And it's written in this kind of interesting style where there's a lot of paragraph breaks and standalone sentences. So I'm definitely intrigued by this. There are loads of books coming out a week later on the 13th of June, so let me run through all of those. First up is perhaps vying with We Do Not Part as the highest profile release of the month, and it's certainly the highest profile English language release of the month, which is 3 Days in June by Anne Tyler. This is about a woman whose world is turned upside down just before her daughter's wedding. Also coming on that day is The City Changes Its Face by Emma McBride. This is a new one from the former Women's Prize winner. This is a sequel to The Lesser Bohemians, which wasn't the book she won for, but it was longlisted for the Women's Prize. It's set in mid-90s London, and it charts the love affair between a drama student and a successful actor. Rejection by Tony Tulatamuti is also coming out on that day. This is one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I featured it in a video I did recently, and it is a set of cringe-inducing linked short stories about modern relationships. It was longlisted for the National Book Award last year, and I'm very excited to read it. The Boyhood of Cain by Michael Amherst is coming out on the 13th as well. This is about a schoolboy whose father is the head teacher, and so he gets special treatment. But when his dad loses his job, he also loses access to the friends that he's made. Last but not least is The South, which is a new one by Tash Orr that is apparently the first in a quartet about the same family. This is set over the course of a summer about two boys who are drawn to one another. A week later, on the 20th, is I Hope You're Happy by Marnie Appleton. This is a collection of short stories described as being a creepy vortex of horror with breakups, bust-ups, threesomes and ghosts. So if any of that appeals to you, you might want to look out for this one. On the 25th is the release of Fundamentally by Nasaiba Yunus. This one is one of those serious comedies that I've been really drawn to lately. It's about a woman who takes a job with the UN in Iraq rehabilitating ISIS women, and she forms a problematic friendship with one of those women. Carrion Crow by Heather Parry comes out on the 27th of February. This is a gothic story about a mother-daughter relationship where the mother has confined the daughter to an attic overlooking the Thames, apparently for her own good, because she is engaged to a man not good enough for the family. Finally, and also out on the 27th, is Cloudless by Rupert Dastur. This is a family story set in 2004 in Llandudno in Wales about a family waiting for the return of their son from the Iraq War. It's supposed to be beautifully written and very moving, and it probably does have my favourite book cover of the month. I'm sure there are tons more titles that are coming out that you may be excited about, and I didn't mention that these are all based on the UK release date. So I know Rejection is already out in the US, and there might be some other stuff that's coming out in the US and other territories that I don't know about. So if there are, do let me know what you're excited about down in the comments. Let's move on then to books on screen, all about TV and movie adaptations of things. And we'll start with the fact that the cast has been announced for the adaptation of Tomi Adeyemi's fantasy novel, The Children of Blood and Bone. It includes former Doctor Who actor and star of Netflix's Supercell, Tosin Cole. I actually have a copy of this book. I haven't read it though, because there was some kerfuffle about Adeyemi coming into reviewers' spaces and ruffling some feathers, let's say. So I'm a bit nervous about reading it and then saying I don't like it, because I don't really want to be told off in public. If you are a fan of the books though and you're looking forward to this adaptation, I'm afraid you have got quite a wait for it though, because it's not coming out until 2027. The first images from the adaptation of Maggie O'Farrell's Hamnet have been released, which stars Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley, and it's being directed by Chloe Zhao, who did Nomadland and The Eternals, both of which I really enjoyed. There's no release date yet, and I have to be honest, I have a very unpopular opinion, one that is out of step with most people, in that I didn't love Hamnet. I didn't think it was all that good, but I can see it making for a really good film in the right hands. And Chloe Zhao is a terrific director, so I do have high hopes for it. Speaking of Paul Mescal, he is also set to appear in an adaptation of the title story from Ben Shattuck's The History of Sound, along with Josh O'Connor, who was in Challengers and was in The Crown. I think he starred as Prince Charles. I haven't seen The Crown, so apologies if that's wrong. But the story is about two young men who travel together recording folk songs in the 1910s. The film is supposed to get its debut at the Cannes Film Festival later this year, so it may be out later in 2025 or early 2026. It could well be an Oscar contender, and I am a sucker for some Oscars chat, so I will be on the lookout for it. There's another film festival going on right now, actually, or it might have just finished by the time you're watching this, but the Sundance Film Festival is happening, and one of the films premiered at it was an adaptation of Max Porter's Grief is a Thing with Feathers, which for some reason has had its title shortened to The Thing with Feathers, and it's starring Benedict Cumberbatch. Sadly, it's had a pretty lukewarm reception from what I've seen, with critics saying that it's missing a bit of an emotional punch and it's wasting Benedict Cumberbatch's talents. Another adaptation at Sundance that has had a more positive reception is a new version of Kiss of the Spider Woman, based on the novel by Argentine author Manuel Puig. I haven't read this book, but I do know it influenced a novel that I did love, which was Blackouts by Justin Torres. Both Kiss of the Spider Woman and Blackouts both have this concept of characters basically describing films to one another. This new film stars Diego Luna of Star Wars Andor fame and Jennifer Lopez of Jennifer Lopez fame. Not sure when it's due to come out, but I would expect sometime later this year or early in 2026. Before we finish then, a quick feel-good story, and for this one we are swinging back towards book prize news because I can't really resist. So the British Book Awards, also known as the Nibbies, recently announced its set of judges for the year, and there are absolutely loads of them, I think because they're going to be grouped up and put across a bunch of categories. I hope that is not one big discussion that's going to be happening about the books. But what is cool to see is that there was representation for book-related content creators. It's rare that this would happen at all, and I think in many circumstances people might roll their eyes at this or look down on content creators being in what they see as genuinely literary spaces. But when it does happen, it really tends to be focused on BookTok because, you know, like you got to get your Gen Z eyes on the prize. What has made me feel good though is to see a YouTuber in the mix, because Booktube's very own Lena Norms is a judge, and I think that's just neat. That wraps up the news for February 2025. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments what you thought of some of these news items. What are your responses to the use of AI? Are you worried about it, or do you think it's just a fad? Let me know which books that are being released that you are most excited about, or which adaptations you are really looking forward to. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit like because it really helps the channel out, and if you'd like to see more, then hit subscribe. But until next time, toodles.